Hey, and welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the nonsense and talk about the bullshit happening in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, flying solo. Have a special guest on today. We're just going to do a mini episode, a little chat. We've had on Katie Talbot in the past, representing Neighbor to Neighbor, but the Holyoke kind of organizing of Neighbor to Neighbor has since been taken over by our guest today, José Maldonado-Velez. He has experience in local government, ran for and won at large seat in Holyoke out of Ward 1, which is rare, if not the first time. So I'll have to ask you about that in a second. But glad to have you on. He's the I actually don't even know your title with Neighbor to Neighbor. I just know you're kind of directing the Holyoke stuff. So Jose, welcome to the Weed Out. Glad you could come on. And first of all, I guess tell us your what you do at Neighbor to Neighbor.
Sounds good. Thanks, Spencer, for the invite. My name is José Maldonado-Velez. He, him, they pronouns. I'm currently the Holyoke chapter organizer for Neighbor to Neighbor. We have four chapters across the state, Holyoke being one of them. And Katie is still with Neighbor to Neighbor. She's just organizing Springfield right now. Yep.
Which, from what I gathered in the time I've gotten to know Katie, I mean, she lives in Springfield, so it probably makes a little more sense organizationally. I'm guessing it's not a bad thing to bring more people to the fold. So Katie's still part of the organization. I didn't mean to make it seem like she's not. She just is focusing more on Springfield now, and it's great to have you, somebody that has, as I mentioned, local government experience, understands how the mechanics work and the interpersonal stuff, the stuff you can't teach, you just got to experience. So just tell us quickly about your, um, you know, you ran for office and you won, and then now you're doing this, which they tie together nicely. You're still a community organizer, you're still in the community, and you're still a leader. But yeah, just tell us about your experience just running for office real quick.
Yeah. So, I mean, even before there, I do have to like contribute a lot of my reasons for running to Neighbor. I came into this organization in the summer of 2020, when the world was going to shit. And during that time, I was organizing the Black Lives Matter mural down on High Street, and Katie, who was organizing for Neighbor Neighbor in Holyoke, showed up as a volunteer. And from there, she brought me in to do a one-on-one, which is something that us organizers are taught to do, having one-on-ones with members in the community. So she asked me to join her, and she brought me to a community garden down in the flats, where I grew up in, was raised in, that sort of come to see in that place as a place where dreams go to die. And when she showed me the strawberries, the grapes that were growing, it just flipped something completely in my head where it changed a lot of how I saw my city, my hometown, that we've been sort of taught to hate our city. And now it's like, no, there's a lot of good things that can happen in our city, as simple as growing some fruits right there. But we can make the city what we want it to be. So anyway, so got involved with Neighbor to Neighbor, door knocked with her, and eventually came into, hey, I want to run for office. And a lot of that came from, Trump being who Trump is.
Yeah.
I always tell people that, the one thing that I personally got from his presidency is how important local government is. So when he was president, I was watching the city council meetings and the way that local counselors were talking to the people in our community. I'm like, why are you talking down to people that you are going to see in the grocery store, that you're going to, see? Like, this is not freaking big politics like that. We're talking about chickens right now. We're talking about backyard chickens, and we're belittling each other. And it was horrible. So, with Neighbor to Neighbor, a little bit of Trump, it really pushed me into pulling papers and running that first year. Along with, like, we had our mayor Josh Garcia, who was running that year as well. Tasama Frivambaletti, Israel Rivera. So there was a big like slate of younger, tend to be more progressive candidates on the ballot. And I think that was a big wave for Holyoke. And yeah, it was an experience. I will say that for the 2 years that I was in there, for sure.
Oh, and I'm like, this could be a whole different episode. This could be a whole different thing. But it is important to highlight how this kind of all folds together. You even mentioned Trump from, you said strawberries and Trump and local government. And it's like, we are multifaceted people, right? People in my life personally think I'm a little too focused on police. Uh, you can never be too focused, but my pushback, it's funny that you bring that up because it's like, you said like we were taught, or the culture is to hate your city and degrade your own city as opposed to wanting to build it up, and that's a tactic of gentrifying. But the thing that I've always been frustrated about is if you keep telling everybody Holyoke is dangerous and the police are going out there saying this is a fucking war zone every fucking day, true or not, people are going to believe it. And then at the same time, you're wondering why businesses, why people don't invest in their properties down here. It's like, well, you're telling them it's worth shit. And I'm not saying you lie and say everything's peaches and cream, but like, come on, like this is one-on-one shit. Like if you want to attract investment, whether from the people here, and I would prefer to have the people here,
for sure,
chances, but like you do need some outside capital in this world. Like I'm not a capitalist, so I reject that system. But at the same time, this is where we live. This is what we're doing, and you gotta. If you claim you want this outside money to come in, and you don't want just be dirty weed money, you can't be saying this place is a fucking war zone. So. But community is important. It's a way to, this is the divide and conquer tactic of the owner class, whether they realize it or not. And that we fight each other, it's neighbor versus neighbor. It's kind of fitting that the name of the organization you work for is neighbor to neighbor, because it really is. If I know my neighbor across the street and I get to know them, I'm more likely to, their trash bins are flying down the street. I know who that is. I'm gonna grab that and bring it back. I'm like, just the little things, and then one less person's gonna swerve to hit a trash can and hit a kid on a bike. It's like you don't realize how like integral all this stuff can be connected, and so it's very poignant that you tied all that together of why you got motivated, because you see how it all kind of, and if you don't push back against it in any way, it trickles down from the top. So from Trump all the way down to the counselors. I mean, they're not connected at all, but they are. Yeah. And if we don't push back on the local level, how the hell could we ever push back on the federal level?
No, for sure.
Who we'll use as our leaders here locally to go advocate for us at the state house and then all the way out. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. And just so neighbor to neighbor does lots of things. Organizes the community is all about bringing people together, but they also do other policy type things. Like one thing I hold near and dear to my heart is the pushing for tenant protections.
Yep.
So maybe you could update us on what's going on there, because I know Holyoke we're trying to get an office tenant protection set up, and yep. A lot of corporate landlords. There's a lot of stuff, and that's real. So please take the mic and tell us all about what's going on.
There's a lot of shitty landlords. Actually, there's some good landlords too. I want to preface this with saying, like, every time we mention landlords, we're not coming after the good ones. We're not coming after the ones that try to do good by our city, especially the local ones. The ones that are from Holyoke, that are, just trying to even house their own families. I have a landlord that is from Holyoke, was raised with her, and unfortunately, because of the costs and everything else, she's had to sell. And I know that what's going to come after that is the corporate landlords, which we see everywhere. And yeah, some of the things that we're fighting up against is we have landlords that are coming in, raising rent on people from 500 up to 1,000, 1,200, up to like $800 plus to some individuals. You have landlords, and these are the same landlords that are coming in and talking about the community in such a degrading way, whether they're calling tenants submissive, or they're saying they're not going to rent to certain population, or they're calling Holyoke the ghetto, the slums, whatever it may be. These are the people that are coming to their city to invest in our city, but in reality, they're just coming in to try to, flip some property or just make some money and then
gentrify, really. I mean, best case scenario is gentrify, like
best case scenario,
because that means that whoever is left will benefit. But the problem with gentrifying is you displace all these people. And it's tough because there are houses that this community, I talked to, this was a while ago, but I was talking to Rebecca Lisi. We don't see eye to eye on a lot, but what she pointed out was we're a city of four, we can comfortably keep, I forget the exact number, it was like 55, 60,000. We're only have 40,000 people. So yeah, you do have to have other people come in. It can't be second homes. And like the irony is, like, the people that don't understand, like, we need this city at 60,000 because the infrastructure set up for that. I'm making that number up. But like, so of course we're paying the same, but it's spread across less people.
Less people, of course.
So that kind of need more people here.
Yeah. And the whole the whole formula fucks us over. That I, that's something that is one thing I will say, and that some of the conservative councilors agreed on, where like the formula itself really screws cities like Holyoke over that had 60,000 that were actually prepped for having way more than 60,000, but it declined and everything, and now we're to your point, 20,000 people less with the expectation of bringing in the same amount and paying the same amount. It's ridiculous.
Because no matter what, all the pipes are there.
Yeah,
Just to talk about water pipes, so like it costs the same to fucking maintain them, and you can't ignore part of it because there's still people and the parts of it do get ignored.
mm-hmm. And then it gets worse, and then it gets so ignored for so long, then it gets worse, and then it's just
And it costs a number that is like, we can't afford this. It's like, no shit. It's like if you let the roof fall off.
Yep.
uh,
Right now.
you mentioned there was the government you got elected into was younger, a little more progressive. And I will say from my point of view as being somebody that attends and watches, if I don't attend, I watch the the meetings. The way some counselors talk about renters specifically,
Mm-hmm.
I own my own house. Well, I don't own it. The bank owns it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
thankful that I can flex my homeowner card a little bit. But the way they talk about renters, it's like, okay, so the landlord pays the taxes. Who pays the landlord?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It boggles my mind that that gets thrown in people's faces. Like, oh, and so it must have been nice to have some renters on the council when you were on, because like at least it's like, well, yeah, over 50% of the city is renters.
64%.
How much?
64% once we jumped.
And
Or
like, yeah, renters. I mean, just on a basic level, you have less incentive to give a shit about the property.
yeah, but
Not saying that makes it okay to degrade other, but like if we had more people that actually got to own their shit, and
mhm.
and then it's like so funny. It's like people would take more pride in it if they got.
Well, I think it's different. I mean, going back to like what we were saying originally, like just the narrative, right? So it's like if you treat people like renters, like they don't own any piece of this, even though they are literally paying your mortgage essentially, then yeah, people are gonna think less than they're gonna think like this is not my home. And you see the difference. Like they're again, 64% of rent, 64 of the population is renters. So there are okay properties. There are okay landlord-tenant relationships that are working. And the difference is these are landlords that people are connected with, that are families with, that are known, that are in the community, that know that like if something happens here, like it'll like immediately they're gonna respond to it. Like that's the difference there, the relationship, right? So it's not the fact that it's a renter that doesn't own a home. It's just the fact that the relationship between the renter and the landlord is deeper because at that point you become like your part owner. This is my home now, and I want to make sure that I'm taking care for myself. I'm taking care for my friend who like owns this property, all those sort of things. But as soon as you don't know your landlord or you're calling and we have property managers here, we call and someone from like El Salvador picks up the phone to respond to like maintenance issues. And no shade against El Salvador, but like
Oh,
our people need like immediate responses for some of the
right.
things that are happening. And the response for the management company is like, we can't do it, we're understaffed. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're
I
still
should
getting paid the rent. So what's happening here? What's happening here? So
it's a you problem, bro.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine owns a parlor faded down in Sargent,
Yeah.
and he had since he's been in that building. I think his property's been sold at least once. But yeah, a management company came in from fucking God knows where, and they basically tried to kick him out. And it's like, dude, I have a contract. Like, what are you fucking doing? Like the shit they try to pull. So imagine if you don't know, you don't have the education, or you're somebody that's trying to lay low for whatever reason. um, you're kind of at the whims of these people, and they get to run it like a feudal system. Um, because of the disconnect, like you're saying, like the management company will be in Boston or even parts of it being in other countries for crying out loud. And like the one place I rented in Holyoke, I did know the landlord, and he didn't live in the house the whole time, but yeah, I got a friend recommended. She was moving out. She's like, "Oh, he has an open apartment. You need an apartment." I moved in, and I was there. And then when he was like, "I can't manage this anymore. I gotta focus more on whatever he was doing for work," and his wife was rising the ranks of her job, whatever. And when he said that, I was like, "Oh fuck, I can't do this again. I'd already had. Once you get a good landlord,
Mhm.
once you get a good one, you remember. Like I lived in New York City for a while. Like you remember. So like if like I said, I'm blessed. I bought it before 2020 happened. I got I have luckily my spouse's, well, not luckily, but her mother passed young, so we had some of her retirement money. So we got really fucking lucky. Like I always say, we have a horseshoe up our ass, and
Mhm.
it's really disappointing when I go to council specifically and see other homeowners talk that way, because it's like you guys don't realize how lucky you have it.
Mhm.
And there's people here that are struggling, and they pay taxes. They just going to the convenience store and participating in the economy in just a little way is still participating in the community.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
what's so frustrating. So I'm glad you guys do what you do as neighbor to neighbor. I know lots of people that praise you and the work, not you specifically, the work that the organization. I mean, they do praise you. People do say nice things about you, just so you know. Um,
Wait,
but
that's cool.
so as just to get back on where I started this tangent, how's the tenant protections office? Where are we at?
Mhm. So you just mentioned, you said something around, oh my God. Actually, well, I'll just say where we're at because you mentioned something that triggered like so around like legal representation, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
Which is part of like what Office of Tenant Protection we're trying to do. If not legal representation per se, at the very least, legal advice. Because you just said it, you had, parlor faded, they came in, they said, hey, you need to vacate the premises or whatever. And the parlor faded was like, no, we have a contract. And a lot of people don't realize that in our community. So you have landlords literally coming in, giving someone a 30-day notice, whatever it may be, and people not realizing that there's still a whole court process that needs to happen. They'll show up to like nonprofits sometimes and on Main Street with their bags saying, hey, my landlord evicted me. And we're like, did you go to court? And they're like, no, then this is not it yet. Like you still have, there's a whole process. So with Office of Tenant Protection, just providing a little bit of that, providing that advice, so that if a landlord is saying something like that, you can call in and be like, "Hey, this is what I got in. Like, what should I do?" Right, and in giving that legal resource to our 64% of the population. Um, right now, where we're at is still the commitment. It's still the commitment that Mayor Garcia made last year, where it's like we're gonna build out an Office of Tenant Protection. On the neighbor and neighbor side, we're really trying to really plan it out so that, and then also when we're ready to like present the plan, hopefully over the summer, meet with them in August at some point and present the plan of what the Office of Tenant Protection would look like. Right now, I will say, like in the conversations with Mayor Garcia, one of the first things, not the office itself, but sort of like a step into it, is a housing navigator position that should be starting soon, based on what I've been hearing. And our feedback and our pushback always is, okay, what is this housing navigator going to navigate if there's no housing to navigate? Like it makes no damn sense. But it's for us, there's a first step into building out that office essentially. Um, so that's where the Office of Tenant Protection right now is, at the local level. At the state level, Governor Healy put out the Affordable Homes Act, and Senator Adam Gomez is going to put in an amendment to add an Office of Tenant Protection, and I think that's sort of a goal, that whether it's state, whether it's local, we're going to get an Office of Tenant Protection. That's really what we're trying to do here.
And it just makes sense, because if you can build like, and this is why I get frustrated with conservatives who want to penny pinch across. If you build something that is stable, where it's not, the landlords have all the control and creates all these crises for these individuals, which then leads to crises in the neighborhood. Sorry, like I have a little bit of the ADHD autism brain a little bit, and I can't help but see like how one pebble starts
Mhm.
off an avalanche of problems.
Mhm.
You evict somebody, they end up on the street, they have to protect whatever they have, they get in a violent altercation. This person likely has family that was relying on them, then that same thing happens to them, all these, and then they're wondering why there's violence on the streets. It's like, well,
Yeah.
if people have housing, you don't have to see them do drugs. Plenty of
Mhm.
people with houses are doing drugs, guy. Like,
And I always say
it's
the story. I always say the story of like, I may been born and raised in Holyoke, but in the spaces where I've seen the most drug use has been the most professional.
Oh, always.
I'm not in Holyoke, but in other places that I live, I'm like, oh girl, like
Oh,
it's
absolutely. It's I am on TikTok, so like I follow a lot of lawyers, and they're on the abolitionist side, so they kind of speak their truth about the system while remaining on the line. But it's fascinating how they do it. But they talk about like, dude, judges laying down the sentences they do, but then having seen them at a bar doing cocaine. Like, come the fuck on. It's like, and we all know. And the thing is, people do drugs or whatever.
Mhm.
If you were on the street, stress the fuck out. A nip of alcohol doesn't sound so fucking bad. I don't even really drink, and that doesn't sound so bad to me. And you just need to numb the pain a little bit. Like, it's not crazy. And again, we all know, like, we're seeing all these stories that come out with the Karen Reed murder trial and how much these guys are drinking and shit. And it's just like, yeah, they're doing it in the privacy of their own home. How's it? And their day job is to go harass people doing this in the street. And I see like, oh, these people need housing to drink in their house. you know, and they'll probably not drink as much if they're in a house to be, or whatever their drug of choice. It doesn't really matter.
Whatever it may be. Yeah, I hear
Really
them.
frustrating how you can see all these things sit together. So I guess I'm just curious, like, you have to keep a lot of optimism doing your work, right? It's probably really easy to get pessimistic. So like, what do you do to remain like turned on, I guess?
And so right now, since starting in August, so starting in January, in this position, the focus has, there's been a lot of work that's been happening, whether it's the Office of Tenant Protection, the Police Commission. There's been statewide things like the which your spouse was part of with the no cost calls. Like, there's a lot of policy and stuff that we've been doing. But the focus for me has been sort of like building the chapter out and building leaders. And the reason I'm saying that's how I answer your question. That's how I stay positive, by like focusing on the people in our city that have never been empowered, have never been asked, like, hey, what do you want the city to look like? What's not working? What is working? All those sort of things. And just seeing like a switch in their eyes and their minds just in that conversation. That's what keeps me going, because we see some fucked up shit. Like, I know, we talk about the conditions, but some of we have some bad conditions in our city, right? Like, it's just um it really, yeah, I go home and like I'm tired, like I'm mentally drained of like everything that's been happening. And then, I get a text message from one of the core team leaders or like one of the other members that are either putting on an event or like felt really good about the door knocking shift today, or like, whatever it may be. That's what keeps me positive. The other people in the community like sort of stepping into their power. I've said it from the beginning, even when I was running in the council, like my hashtag was very Bernie Sanders, which was not me nosotros. And I've always said that from the beginning. Like, we sort of fall in this trap of like electing the savior, or electing one person. Not one person is going to save us, it's all of us. So yeah, that's the only thing that keeps me going. Just seeing people step into their power, believe in their power, and like start taking action. And like, how can I help them and support them in that? Because the rest of the work, it's draining. It really is draining. But yeah, the people make it worth it though, for sure.
People power, man. And like you said, when you said you were trying to build out the leadership and give, offer people, have you ever been asked how you feel, or giving people that power? You said nosotros. What was your hashtag? Sorry.
Not me, nosotros.
Not me, nosotros. And which, for those that don't speak Spanish, means not me, us, or all of us. And for me, I have a similar thing, with abolition, where people say, well, who's going to keep us safe? We keep us safe. If you know your neighbor
Mhm.
and you see something weird, you don't pick up a phone and call somebody and wait for somebody to come. If you know them, you're going to probably feel comfortable going up to their door and saying, hey, is everything all right? And obviously I'm painting a broad brush. There's a million things, but like, or you see somebody, it's like, they look like they're looking in a window. That doesn't seem appropriate. You can be, hey, what's going on? And yeah, you can turn into a Karen real quick. But if you know your neighbors,
Don't turn into a Karen, Spencer.
I'm not. I actually,
But
I'm right near the hospital. So like, I see a lot of cruisers come down my street, and not on business. It's not like what they drive different in my neighborhood than they do in the flats. I'll just put it that way. Like they're not doing this in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's creeping. They boot down my street, right? Because I'm right behind the hospital. What's that? Sorry.
That up and down the same road like
Right.
5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so obvious, and it's we keep us safe,
Mhm.
and knowing your neighbor and feeling comfortable if you need something or need to talk, like, hey, have you noticed, like, who's this dog here? Like, whose dog is this? We should find its home. If you know your neighbors, you're probably going to figure it out pretty quick. So the whole building your neighborhood, and it's not necessarily like, oh, do you want to be a leader? Because like you said, a strong man is not the solution. And just like, and that's why I get frustrated with Democrats parroting the Trump is the bad man. Yeah, he's a bad guy, but it's just like Bibi Netanyahu is not the only one to blame for what's happening in Israel. There's a whole system behind them. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not as afraid if Trump gets power because he is just one man.
Mhm.
At the same time,
Mhm.
we should absolutely not be electing people like this, and we should absolutely not be giving people like this power. But how you fight it is the local level.
Mhm.
We can
Mhm.
miss so much shit on the local level. We see fucking the South do it all the time with their, or we see certain places with the regressive policies that don't like trans people. They're able to put up roadblocks. Why can't we do the same the other direction?
Mhm. Mhm.
How do you do that? You got to know your neighbors. You got to have trust in your local government. And because there's lawsuits, there's ways to gum up the works. There's a million ways to fuck with shit. And um, but we can't do it unless we know each other. So the organizing that you're doing is incredibly important when neighbor to neighbor does. I know Bridget, my spouse, really loves participating, loves getting. It's like it's the easiest way to get to know people because you don't even have to suss out like do these people have the same values I have.
Mhm.
They may not be exactly your same values, but they want the neighbors to have housing. That seems like a good place to start. So it's if you're looking for, I'd say the reach out to the audience is if you're looking for community and you're in the Holyoke area or you're in Springfield, and tell us the other jurisdictions y'all are in.
So we have out in East Mass, we have Lynn. So it's about 30 minutes from Boston, I believe. And then there's Worcester chapter that will be starting up soon.
So if you're in any of these areas, like reach out to neighbor to neighbor on social medias. Like they're your accounts are very active on Instagram. I follow them there. So you can get information there. But could you tell the audience like where people could find information to get involved? Because we need people to get involved.
So I'll share the link with y'all so you can go straight to the link. There's a sign up form that you can fill out and you'll ask like which chapter you want to be signed up with or like which one you want to be connected with. And the chapter organizer from that chapter will reach out within the week or two to set up a time. I started mentioning with Katie like the one-on-one, that's sort of like our bread and butter, like building community, having one-on-one. So whenever someone does reach out, expect a organizer to reach out to invite you to a one-on-one, either over coffee, over Zoom, or wherever it may be. Because this is the first step, having conversations. This is the very first step. We're all, whether blame it on the pandemic, blame it on internet, whatever it is, we're very isolated people. And like, this even in these moments of like having a conversation, it releases something in people are like, oh, okay, I can be safe here. I can be safe here.
Absolutely. And humans are social creatures. We work together. Our evolution, not to be all like Darwinist, but our evolution is that we're supposed to work together. The survival of the fittest, this individual shit, this stuff that's really fueled by capitalism and patriarchy and putting everything into a funnel or a silo, is really what really creates all this divide.
Mhm.
And then the fact that people have to, when the economics are tight, people have to up and move.
Mhm.
So like somebody in Springfield has to move to Holyoke because they can't afford Springfield anymore. Now they're in a whole new community. They don't fucking know anybody. That upheaval is what keeps people really isolated from one another.
And that's really why we organize the people, right? To that, that's exactly it, right? So it makes it much harder for land. So right now we really want to do some tenant organizing and building associations or unions eventually, because it makes it much harder for a landlord to fight the whole building versus like each individual person. And
Divide.
like this, divide and conquer is what works. So, and we're trying to flip that. We're trying to go the opposite direction.
Yeah, and it's no different than at your job. They try to divide and conquer at most jobs places. They don't want people talking about how much they make.
Mhm.
because then that means, oh, wait, you're making X amount. We've been here the same amount of time. We do the same job. Why are you getting three more? Oh, oh, I don't speak proficient English, but like we're doing the same job and the job gets done. Like that's my industry. I'm in the fish business. So, I see a lot of that shit. And I'm a rabble rouser. I'm always being like, what do you make? Yeah, you should be asking more. You,
Yeah,
I would ask for
I
more.
always ask. I always
No,
ask.
no, no, always. And they and it takes a little bit because I'm a gringo, right? And I work with a lot of Guatemalan and Mexican guys, and they're fucking great, but they don't trust when a white guy is asking them questions like that, and I don't blame them. So it took a while at this particular job to like get up that like I had to like prove myself that I'm like not one of these like manager want to be person trying to climb the ladder, so to speak. It's like no, I want to do my job. I don't want to get paid for it, just like you. What we do is valuable. Like, and it's funny because they do businesses, especially in my food industry, they do this. It's I don't know if it's on purpose. I couldn't tell you, but they purposely put a mix of people in, whether they're people with papers or no papers, with people with papers that are legal to work, and that way you can never form a union.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
have the language divide
Mhm.
between the white guys and the Spanish speaking guys, and even then they'll have pockets like at a couple spots I've worked, they'll have like a clique of Puerto Rican folk and then a clique of Guatemalan folk, and they don't get along. And it's like, guys, we're all on the same fucking team.
Mhm.
We're all on the same team. We can do this. Like they can give us a little bit more money, like or at least tell us the truth about the profits. Like at the
Yeah.
very least, it's shit that gets into money. But yeah, talking and getting to know the person and creating a safe space to share ideas and thoughts. Like I know it's not comfortable to go to city council and speak your mind because
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of people there you don't know. But a
Mhm.
neighbor to neighbor, you may get a little more practice speaking your mind because there's people who like values. And then
For
maybe
sure.
you'll get a little more comfortable taking that risk at the next dinner party or next function, being like, you know what I think is crazy? Cash bail, whatever, because that could be a third rail for some people. So,
Mhm.
but you got to build up your tolerance in the good places, a welcoming place like neighbor to neighbor.
Mhm.
And before we wrap up, I do want to get out. So you guys are collecting signatures, correct? Or no, surveys. You're doing surveys on the police accountability board.
Yeah.
So please tell us more about that real quick. Give us the pitch and how people in Holyoke could help.
Yep. So the police department is the one department that doesn't have any commission or committee, citizens committee attached to it. So that was an order that I had put in along, or Councilor Rivera had put in, and I co-signed it along with other councilors last year. And essentially to build out a police commission. Right now on the neighbor and neighbor side, we're really just canvassing the community, asking people like, what do they want out of police commission? Do they feel safer on the police? Is there something they could be doing differently? Should we be funding other departments? Just this about it's about like a 15-minute survey, I would say. Right now, if they people want access to the survey, I would say just reach out to me. I can put the email in. We'll also share follow us on social media, and we'll share out to the neighbor and neighbor page and whatnot to do the survey. Mhm.
And anybody listening, you can always reach out to the weedout at gmail.com. We'll get you in contact with anybody. So anything, you can always reach out to us. Just a reminder for any of the shows that we've done in the past. If you have anything, Joanna and I are more than happy to connect everybody to the appropriate places. So never feel awkward about it. This is what we're doing it for the community. So um, we'll post all this information. I'll post on the website www.theweedout.com underneath our episode. Under every episode, there's notes or links, or say if somebody's on here and they're really active on social media, we'll link them there. I'll put Jose's contact information regarding this survey. So if you missed it or whatever, it will be there. Just go to the website and again, if you don't see it there, just feel free to email me. I'm more than happy to get everybody connected because this is really important. Um, you know, I'm curious what the overall feelings or temperature of the community is on policing. I'm probably personally going to be disappointed because I'm kind of on the fringe. but I am just still curious if people even realize how much money we spend. Like I think from the fiscal conservative side, like there is an argument there. Like
Mhm.
guys, we're
Yeah,
spending
do it.
almost 40% of our budget on this, and then they ask for more.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
for overtime, they ask for fucking overrides. And I don't know about you, at my job, something's getting changed if that happens.
All that overtime, hell yeah. It makes no sense. Millions of dollars on
My
overtime.
manager, if my supervisor is mismanaging hours and he's asking every week, so either he's budgeting incorrectly and he needs to be retrained or fired or released from his role, or it's yeah, I don't know. It's how can you justify this money? And it's not even an investment back. Like when you invest in water pipes, you get a return. When you invest in cop salary, that money's just gone. Poof.
Yeah.
You get
Uh,
nothing back for it.
Along with like lost
Then
like
we can talk about all the other trickle down effects of policing.
lost.
But I'm just saying there's no like even for the initial investment, you don't get much back. You know, the vehicles depreciate. Everything they use is worthless after they use it because of the nature of what they do. And just like, yeah, their biggest assets is probably their fleet.
Mm,
And
mm,
those things literally they roll off the lot. Any car is worth less. So like anything we've invested in these things, we don't get nothing back for it.
mm.
Whereas like, you know, you invest in I guess I don't know much about the sports complex. Maybe we could talk about that another time. But you know, in theory, this investment will bring tournaments to town and maybe get more people down here, and seeing the Holyoke's not a bad place to be. And it is convenient. We're right on the pike, you know.
Mm.
That kind of makes it's not what I would do with the money, but it
Yeah.
makes some sense. The police stuff is just like, come on.
I think a lot of it, I mean, there's times for Holyoke to try to be on the offense a little bit more. So like really trying to create the world that we want and the city that we want versus like reacting to the shit that we have to deal with.
Right.
And I think that's the police department is that it's just a reactionary.
Very
It's,
force, yeah.
um,
And it's tough because you know the propaganda is real, and we've been told forever that they're here to protect and serve. But if you follow law, you know that's not true. But there's just less of us that know that. And again, this is where these community gathering spaces are important because we can share this information, and it's not necessarily an attack on these people,
mhm.
an attack on this system that's not helping. And it's you know my argument makes it worse.
It's not being able to see, not being allowed to see an alternative. I think is what happens a lot. I think a lot of times, even when we ask people in the community that are quote unquote pro police, us like seeing them as safety, have had some sort of negative relationship with them, whether it was a cousin or like an uncle, whatever it may be, right? But there's no alternative. We've never been asked to think of the alternative. And I think that's where neighbor comes in. Okay, so what is it? What can we think of? What's the alternative to this policing? Because it's not working. I mean, the conservatives see it's not working, we see it's not working. Like it's doesn't work. And you can keep spending money.
The
It's
only
cool.
people the only people it works for are the contractors that are selling them the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It's
They're
the only
making
people that's really working for because you know even from a workers' rights point of view, I don't think cops are workers. Just so everybody knows, don't have a heart attack. But even if we're going to call them workers, their job is quote unquote dangerous, and we're not doing. It's not. But you know, my job is actually more dangerous as a truck driver statistically. But why are we willingly creating a job that's dangerous? Like
mm,
that's crazy to me. And
mm,
why aren't we finding ways to make it safer? Like you know, not everything has to be a traffic stop with a gun.
mm, mm,
That's creating a tense situation. Just
mm,
saying. And you never know. Cops don't know if somebody's all there when they
mm,
roll up. Um,
mm.
and you know, I see a gun, I see a guy with a hand on his gun, my hackles are up. Even though I'm in sound mind and sound mind and sound body, I know what a gun can do.
Yeah. I remember one day getting pulled over by a cop. I was speeding or something. No, I think the car I had muffler was like missing, so it was so noisy and everything. But he come to the window, and I'm like nervous, and I look at his gun is like literally in my view right there. He's like, "Why are you nervous? Like, why are you sweating?" And I'm like,
Bro,
and I just like point to the gun. I'm like, because of that. He's like,
gun eye level with me right now. I am scared of guns because I'm a goddamn American and I know what they can do. Have you not turned on the nightly news? It has nothing to do with you, officer. If I see anybody with a gun, I'm automatically paying attention.
yeah, for sure.
I'm so grateful that you made some time to come on today. I hope to have you on again in the future. And again, open invite. Anytime you need to get the word out about anything, we're more than happy to do it. All of our listeners are in the Massachusetts area. That's what we focus on. So, and we're trying to stay Western Mass, Berkshire specific, but all the stuff is tied together. what happens in one community affects another, city to city, neighborhood to neighborhood. So that's where organizations like yours come in. So I'm always just so grateful that you guys exist. I appreciate the work you're doing, and I will never miss an opportunity with one of my neighbors to bring up the work you do, and hopefully I can convince at least one person to participate. And it doesn't even have to be a neighbor to neighbor. There's other organizations too, but y'all have really good base value. Listen, you guys care about housing and community care. That's the way I'm interpreting what y'all do. I assume that's what you want. I think it's effective.
Thanks, sponsor.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys doing the tenant protections. I was a tenant for a long time, and I could be a tenant again any day. Anything can happen, and people, if they're given the opportunities, they won't squander them. I know they won't. I've been in the food industry my whole life. I've worked with people of all walks of life, all different challenges, and if they get an opportunity to be stable, it's amazing what a difference it can make. So that's really great work that you guys are doing. And again, everybody just go to our website, theweedout.com, or check the show notes, or hit me up on social media, and we'll get you any of the contacts that we mentioned on the show. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off today, Jose?
No, just, I think you said it, even if it's not neighbor to neighbor, what's going to get us across is building community, talking to your neighbors. When was the last time you knocked on your neighbor's door? And just go ahead and do that.
My thing I would love to do in a place like Holyoke. I wish we could do something on like a place like my street where it's we're kind of on top of each other, but everybody's got a yard, right? Why can't we have why can't we all pitch in and buy a snowblower between 4 or 5 houses? Why can't we share a lawnmower? We're not using a lawnmower every fucking day. So that's the types of things we could be doing. And it doesn't have to be formal. Just make friends with your neighbor. We both don't need a weed whacker, or loppers or whatever, random shit. Like, we don't all need to go and own a pair of the shit. Like, let's think about the little opportunities here and community and sharing each other's tools, our ideas. So there's a million ways this can shake out these organizing opportunities. It could be as simple as just sharing yard tools. Save money. So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in to this special episode with José Maldonado-Velez of Neighbor to Neighbor. Look forward to hearing more from you guys in the future. And as always, keep weeding out the bullshit.